So Scout did not enjoy that early laning phase. Ivan gone as well. I wonder if there'll be a Maokai back. I mean, it leaves up other potential picks then, but Maokai has been one of the more powerful picks throughout this series.
Has been, but there's so many powerful picks that have been remained on the ban list the whole way through. All right, Corki's still unbanned. Do you leave it open as first pick? No one's counted it so far. I think that one should be very valuable. Corki left open, 100% win rate, huge win streak in LPL playoffs, 14 games on the trot if I remember my numbers right, and Scout has a chance to make it 15.
Why Yone? That's such a weird ban from Weibo.
I don't get it.
I feel like they've just... I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people will debate that one on Twitter. It seems like a weird ban to me, to say the very least. Yeah. But Breathe, potential to go for that Renekton in that top side. Things like the Leona still open and available. Even things like the Ashe that we've seen. You know, we saw it in game number 1. Wasn't that successful, and it feels like the rest of the series, everyone's just moved away from the pit.
Stuff like the Ezreal too. Lillia's not on the ban list right now. That's very, very impactful. Very good with the Renekton too, because the Renekton, right?
Tarzan picked a game
Can do that. Yeah, I would prefer the Lillia if you're going to do that though, because it just gives you that extra, you know, it doesn't put that onus of early game excellence on you. You need to be perfect throughout pretty much the whole game and not make mistakes. It is the Zeri locked in for Xiaohu, not really wanting to lock in another role. Ezreal's an easy lock-in here for LNG, you feel?
Ezreal. I mean, Ezreal Corki, just a great pair of carries. It gets so much done for you. A lot of range on you, a lot of poke available. Leona, Ezreal would not be a too surprising
hang on. Ziggs isn't bad. We could see the Leona Ziggs instead. That's something which has also slipped through. It's a game 5. There are a lot of important bans which you have to consider going into this. Weibo did leave the Ziggs open. They banned the Yone. They don't ban the Corki. They don't ban the Ziggs. Gala, maybe the very best of it in the league. They don't go towards it. All right, so crisis averted there, I suppose. But the Ezreal still very, very powerful. The Ziggs ban not really needed, I suppose, in this one.
I mean, light's no slouch on the Ziggs either.
All right.
And there it is, that Nidalee we talked about.
Okay.
Does come on through. Tarzan, it didn't work in game number 1, but he wants to try again. And this time he's got a Renekton in that top side to set up for him. I wonder if we do see a top side focused matchup here. It's generally been focused towards the bottom lane.
So you can ban away the stuff which can play disengage against the Renekton Nidalee. It's the same kind of thing when you play against Renekton Sejuani or something like that. You ban away stuff which can go unstoppable, like the Ornn, the K'Sante rather. I mean, Ornn can technically do that. I doubt that's going to be locked in. Do they want to just chance the fact that Zika will go towards the cannon and say, all right, you lock in the cannon, you die to the Nidalee? No, they don't want to chance that. They take that away too. So it's not, there aren't that many things you can play into the Renekton now. The Gnar is one of them, but any of the picks left are going to be quite vulnerable to Tarzan if he just does choose to be topside centric.
So much resting on this series. So much resting on this final game. And it looks like LNG wanting to set up Gala for success. He's got that Ezreal. He was so close to carrying those fights, defending the Nexus. But it wasn't quite enough in game number 4. He gets his Ezreal again. He gets set up for success in that bottom lane.
Right, so what are we looking for here? Do you lock in something like the Rel, one of your engaged carries, if you want to do it this early? Light did, of course, get a win on that Jhin earlier in the series. I don't love it. If WeiWei still locks himself in a tank jungle, you'd still be against 2 tanks. He doesn't go towards that. He does go towards the Ashe, which has been abandoned since that game 1, much like the Nidalee. Weibo, very similar to the game 1 draft, but they lost that game 1. I'm getting a little bit worried if they play it like they did at the start of the series.
Maybe just deciding there was nothing wrong with the draft itself, just mispiloted. As you say, very, very similar. And with the Leona there as well, if LNG look for more commitment in these fights, it's a pretty easy Braum angle, potentially alongside that Ashe. You've got your engage from the arrows, but it is going to be that Lillia anyway for WeiWei. And there we go, Sion comes through for Zika.
Right. Okay, I did not expect the Sion. Sion is a sign of a lane swap. You can lane swap with this champion. We'll have to keep an eye on that level 1 now. Game 5, maybe we start pulling out all the stops in terms of the crazy strategies. Chris could go towards that Braum. It does work well against the Leona. It could also work well against the Lillia. You can actually block Lillia ult with that champion, but do they want another aggressive go button instead. The Rel would be better aggressive, but the Braum adds a lot more utility in tank. That's exactly what they're going towards at the end of it. Ashe, Braum, it is some extra setup for that Nidalee. This time though, Light must hit his arrows. LNG, watch out for those lane swaps early. They do have a Sion, it can potentially be there. All the same, you have a very good tank front line into what Weibo are bringing to bear with them. Both of these teams have ample engage, some interesting ways to play out the early game as well. You've got a Nidalee, you've got a Sion. Watch out for those first few minutes of the game. Weibo typically getting ahead in them, but this is a game 5 and crazier things have happened than a turnaround in that early game. All on the line now. Third best of 5 in a row between these two teams, which have gone to 5 games in an elimination match. It doesn't get better than this. It doesn't get better than this as they go the distance.
It's a long while since we've seen a Sion in that top side, but looking to play for the weak side, looking to defend while the rest of his team takes over the game. We'll see if that can work out for Zika. I'm curious about the compositions. I'm curious about how this game is going to go. But mostly, I'm curious about who is going to make it through to the next round. So many stories in this matchup with Scout versus Xiaohu in the mid lane. Xiaohu with Gala and Breathe in the series as well. The old RNG gang up against one another. Tarzan and WeiWei swapping rosters last year. Breathe, the only new face since 2023 within this matchup. There are so many big names, so many trophies among the names of this matchup. But here we go, game number 5 again, the 5th series in a row between these teams to go the distance. And we may well have a rematch in regionals as well. It's time for game 5.
欢迎来到英雄联盟。敌军还有30秒到达战场，碾碎他们。
So we did say that Sion can sometimes lead to some early game shenanigans. Well, Braum can too with his level 1 plays. As it stands, standard fans, so it might just be standard lanes in it as well. Wouldn't surprise me because you do also still have good laning phase of that Ezreal Leona on the other side of the map. You don't always want to abandon that. And there are, of course, been a lot of checks and balances been put in to make sure that lane swaps don't completely go the distance, but it's worth mentioning it all the same. Weibo, they're going to go walk in, clear out a ward, use that sweeper early on Chris. Early information has been so important between these two teams. Any kind of information on first jungle start gleaned from the other jungle could really pay itself back in dividends.
Really importantly there as well, Xiaohu was the one to last hit that first ward, so we'll hit level 2 off the first minion wave in the mid lane. Big advantage potentially for Xiaohu. Obviously he's up against a Corki, whether or not he can maintain control of that first wave enough to hit the level 2, I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see with that one. Breathe drops a ward onto that blue buff. He wants to know where WeiWei's going.
So, WeiWei potentially spotted if he goes up towards that ward there. And of course, the Renekton does give you this value to say, look, you're against the tank. They can't stand against you at level 1. You got the Conqueror, you got the Q healing. You get that enraged as well. The empowered one. So, that's a flash in for the passive.
Crisp gets the stun onto Gala. Big damage onto the carry early on in this laning phase. Hung disengages. That's 2 summoners out from Chris to make that happen. It is control of the lane, but is that worth 2 summoners? I'm not sure.
This is the thing. So, we did say earlier in the series, LPL were the first region historically to just flash in and try and get a good trade to get control of the wave. Now, what this means is that you have 3 pushing waves for Weibo. If Tarzan can use it, it is worth the summoners. If he can't use it, then I think you start running into some issues. At the end of the day, Gala's still going to be able to pick up farm. Tarzan, he has been passed the buck here. What can he do with the pushing lanes?
I mean, he's been the main character for Weibo all year long. He's been, or at least in summer. He had 10 MVPs during the group stage. Tied for the top with a hawk shot coming through, spotting out WeiWei. He's on his chickens and Tarzan is waiting, ready to pounce. He stood outside the brush. Blastcone's away instead, looking towards a red buff. Crisp has moved in. Crisp has been so aggressive across this series. This is like a renaissance of Crisp as a support.
And this makes a lot of difference. No, you don't get the spear onto WeiWei. Not great from Tarzan there. Would have been nice to get that chunk, but you still get a camp taken away. And it means that WeiWei can't do anything in these lanes too. there are two things you want to see with pushing lanes. One, the jungler make use of it to get their own advantages, but two, also, the jungler, if you stop the enemy jungler going into your own lanes, means your lanes get to keep pushing. Pushing lanes means you're more likely to get better resets, more likely to make the enemy drop some farm as well, and you start eking out advantages. It actually was a very big way that T1 played and won the World Championship last year. It has been very effective in the recent years of League of Legends. Tarzan needs to be able to keep this up, though, and make sure they can keep ahead of WeiWei and stop WeiWei from interrupting his own lanes.
See if they can keep this pressure on. Because that was what happened in game number 1, right? We saw Tarzan on this Nidalee. We saw a really, really great start to the game. But unfortunately, couldn't keep that ball rolling. And as you said in game number 1, those first couple of deaths as a Nidalee, if you lose that momentum, really can finish out your game, and in this case would finish out that series. Tarzan has a lot of pressure on his shoulders here. A lot of onus on him to carry the game. Has actually foregone his blue buff to get up to this top side and get on his Crows.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do is make sure he can get towards his Crows, get towards the second respawn of Raptors, which of course Lillia loves to take, and it means that he hasn't taken his first blue buff, and he hasn't spent as much time towards the bot side, but it means that there's no option for WeiWei to get into his jungle, get that real quick chicken steal in the way that WeiWei does. Loves himself some KFC out there in the jungle. Hawkshot's going to spot this as well. All information to Tarzan. Tarzan, can he make the early game impact like he did in that game 1? And also, step beyond that, can he make that impact and then keep himself ahead?
Only time will tell. Keep my eyes on breathe in this one as well. He's got a good matchup, obviously, as Renekton against Sion. Generally speaking, Renekton will be quite happy to bully that matchup out, especially after that first recall, once you got a little bit of damage to work with. It'll be down to Zika trying to survive. I'm curious as well if Tarzan will end up looking towards that top lane, you know. With the setup for free, can be a very easy kill to finish off if you can land that javelin off of the stun. Sets up for very easy kills, but whether or not you have time to go up towards that top side is a different question, because it's been very much a mind battle between WeiWei and Tarzan. And it's just poetic that, you know, swapping organizations as well, and now this absolute mind game for the final game of the series. Too many stories.
There's so many, and we've spent a lot of time, we've given a lot of time in 5 games to talk about them, and I think the biggest things I can think about in this one is that no player has walked away without a good game. I think that in every single game, one player has at least had at least a game which has been better than their opponent. Breed, Zika, both getting MVPs. I think mid-jungle has gone both ways as well, and that's great. It means that you're not walking away just logging onto your social media and saying, oh, this player completely ruined it. And yeah, there will be criticisms to be put across because that's pro League of Legends, and there will be a loser after this, but I'm glad that the stories have kind of been put to fruition there. Tarzan goes up towards these grubs, early spawn up there. WeiWei maybe not expecting this. Might be able to smite fight for the last one.
Tarzan gets that one, and the smite used to secure it. Could look for a spear, but I don't think he'll find it, especially with those mites annoyingly in the way. So, 2 for 1 on the grubs. Tarzan will still be happy with the fact that he managed to get 2 of them, and he even finds a little javelin on the scout as a parting gift.
Yeah, Breed didn't have the best reset for those grubs to help Tarzan take them. He was teleporting back in as WeiWei was walking up, and that Breed wasn't really there to be able to do that much. So, there's a cull picked up for Gala. Remember in game 1, which was similar draft to what Weibo drafted here, LNG responded by picking up 3 culls on the other side and saying, look, we'll outlast, we'll get ourselves the first early play that we can, but we'll not be over pushing for it, and then we'll try and cash in the culls and get a huge advantage for it. There's only the one this time, and Xiaohu's even picked up his own, so that isn't going to be put up here. Again, Weibo not wanting to get outvalued monetarily in that one. And as we look through this early game, keep track to see exactly where that first early advantage comes through. Tarzan had a good start, needs to keep ahead though. Actually, WeiWei's been doing well to pick up enough farm to give himself in arm's reach.
Yeah, I just love that. You know, we've had 1 or 2 games where there has been a lot of early action, but both teams, I mean, it's game 5. Everything on the line. You know that they're going to be cautious. Xiaohu not being cautious at all. Caught in the jungle here. Good damage out from WeiWei, but it's not enough because Tarzan trading it onto Scout. Fairly even in the 2v2, but another javelin lands. WeiWei aggressed upon Tarzan, dodging everything. And both mid-jungles limp away.
It is tense, Joe. It is tense. The butt cheeks are firmly clenched between these 2v2s in the mid jungle. It means an awful lot to the players. LNG, of course, in front of their home arena too, and it has been so back and forth. But Tarzan manages to force WeiWei out from the river. Does mean that he won't be able to access bot side as well. So is there going to be something happening there? No, it's not a bot side dive. It's a full camp clear from this bot side. Tarzan going to very quickly go towards that. And because WeiWei did take a big chunk, and Tarzan has the sustain, which WeiWei doesn't. On that Lillia for this point of the game, Tarzan is open towards the bot side, and Gala and Hung, maybe they pushed too far here. They have flashes, is that going to be enough?
Slow comes on through, stun will land onto Hung. That should set up for a javelin, but he's underneath the tower. Oh, Gala maybe should have blocked that one, to be honest. Hung now extremely chunked, and Tarzan wants to find him. Oh, good sidestep from Hung. That felt a little dangerous, but cheeks firmly engaged once again as the arrow does land onto Hung, but Tarzan's pushed away. In the meantime, Breather's gone for a dominance up in that top lane. WeiWei trying to escape with his life. The passive stacking up. It's not enough to find the stun. Tarzan looking for more javelins, but Light in the meantime is getting so much gold.
I mean, man, the Olympics have ended, so Tarzan's decided to bring the Javelin toss over towards here instead. Putting on to Summoner's Rift. Weibo pushing in all lanes again, starting just make LNG lose some farm, lose some jungle camps. It's that slow roll. It's not been the explosive play. And, well, if you remember what happened in the first game of the series, of course, Tarzan got those 2 kills up in the top lane in that explosive play, but they also threw an explosive play towards that bot side as well. Weibo, I think they'll maybe be learning from that mistake and not just over pushing it. This is fine for now, but you do not want to be going too deep into an ignite on the Leona, especially if she hits level 6 after a certain point as well. You don't want to be giving that gold over to LNG. Weibo, content to slow roll for now.
I think Weibo as well. Desperate for their opportunity to face up against top esports. Whoever wins this one will go into that series against top esports to decide who makes it into LPL finals. Well, LNG already had their chance against top esports. They lost 3-0. Top esports were beaten by BLG. BLG beat Weibo, so I reckon if you're Weibo right now, you reckon maybe there's an angle there. Maybe there's a chance.
Hey. And the last time they faced off in a best of 5 as well was in the regionals of last year, where Weibo beat out top esports to cinch themselves a chance to go towards that World Championship last year. So top esports haven't had a best of 5 against them this year. Very different stories for both of them on this time around. But hey, I'm sure they'll be wanting that chance. Of course, folks, we're 11 minutes in. It's not enough to call it like this. Last game, Weibo had an early game advantage and they went in towards the middle late game. They couldn't close that one out. Every chance to LNG start to stabilize. LNG have been a team which really thrive when they get that stability in side lanes where they can push out the side lanes, send like 4 people into a lane and just crush through a turret or 2 and move around the map, constantly forcing the enemy team to defend those turrets. It's gonna be hard to do that though when you do have grubs on the other side from Weibo, when they do have this early gold lead. So LNG, they're going to have to start racking their brains to say, right, how do we start settling down the map and get Scout on the Corki, which has been so successful in LPL playoffs, into the side lanes and getting gold.
Spear of the wall, Tarzan, no smite. Oh, slightly wide of WeiWei. I don't think it would have been much of an opportunity anyway, but look at the way that Crisp is playing this early game. Like, he went aggressively behind the Drake there to get vision and make sure that there was no trade available for LNG, and then immediately sprints up towards that top side, just in case there is that angle onto WeiWei. Feels like Crisp and Tarzan have really become like one mind. They've mind melded at this point. They think as one.
The Weibo hype man. We finally discovered it.
But he's, I mean, Crisp has just had a fantastic series, hasn't he? I mean, getting MVP earlier on in the series as well. Remember, this is a player that earlier on in the split was fighting for his place within the roster. Feels like he is fully back.
You know, he's not been without the couple. He had the one airball ult as well, but hey, you know what? I think all players in the series are very happy with the way that they've been coming through. Zika taking some good trades up here as well. Haven't really had much chance to talk about the Sion. That will be a tanked front line and an extra engaged threat later into the game. I will say, I don't love Sion into Ashe Braum, because you dive into the Braum, he puts up the shield, tanks up your ult, and then you just get slowed by that passive. And so, the way that Zika will have to play this game later on is make sure you are hyper-coordinated with the Lillia and with the Leona. When you're going in, there needs to be another engaged threat so they don't just turn and isolate you in that front line. Double AD carry is very good at killing you like that. You cannot afford to be just stunned up with that Braum passive in the front line.
feel like specifically Ashe and Zeri as well, just so good at killing tanks. Like when you get to 3-4 items, these two AD carries just, they're exceptional at burning through a front line. Need to see value found there by Zika. I mean, surviving well in the laning phase, only 10 CS down at the moment, which you'd expect perhaps even a slightly larger lead for the Renekton. Black Cleaver finished off, by the way, for Breathe. That's the first tier 3 item of the game, and in fact, Light turns me into a liar as he finishes off his Kraken Slayer.
Well, it's still first, it's just slightly beyond
Well,
that. You're not quite like just yet. Be kind to yourself, Joe. It's been a long series for both these teams. Gonna have to spare ourselves some sympathy just yet. We're gonna have to save our energy and our brains, I suppose, for later on. Dive coming in towards the Sion. He is probably dead.
No brain left, only engage. Zika gonna be the target, and he will go down. Breathe even allows it over to Tarzan. Everyone knows that Tarzan is the carry in this one. Breathe combo Zika to protect his minion wave, and in fact a TP up to the top side from Xiaohu to switch a route.
And you can see that Scout is teleported down to the bot side instead. So, he's going to get himself some alone time there. Gala's forced away from all. This is now more important. Remember, folks, if you are cross-mapping and you have grubs, you have the advantage. You kill towers quicker. LNG, yes, they get that time on bot side, but they're losing out in mid lane and in top lane at the same time. So, LNG have said, all right, Scout, buddy, you're on the Corki. 14-game win streak in LPL playoffs, but giving the resources over to that Corki, is it going to be the same with giving him 2 turrets over in a fell sweep and the Herald? That feels like a bad trade to me.
Feels like a huge win for Weibo. It's a 4,000 gold lead for them at 14 minutes. That is monumental. Yep, the first Drake with 5 grubs. Next Drake not up for another 3 minutes, but that's Herald taken by Tarzan. And guess what? Herald is usually the tool to get mid-tier 1. Mid-tier 1's already gone. This Herald can get massive side lane value now.
So what you might do with this now, we see this when you don't use it for like an immediate turret take. You wait till the dragon spawns and then you use the Herald somewhere to force someone to respond to it. So what Weibo might do is say, look, we don't need to slam through a tower. We have the 5 grubs, that's easy enough. Around that dragon spawn, wait to see if Tarzan is using that to break open a lane and just walk towards the dragon instead and make sure that LNG lose out on that objective game too. 5 grubs to Weibo already, it would be 2 early dragons. It would be nice for Weibo to get themselves onto that point as well.
I mean, this feels like a very rough game for LNG at this point, and I want you to kind of reiterate to me the win conditions for LNG, because it feels like, well, I'm going to have to hold that thought. Yes, I tried to open up a conversation. It's caused action. Crisp on the front line. He's tanky, but not tanky enough. And there's one for LNG already. Xiaohu caught and finished off. That's a shutdown for Scout. As Gala in a 1v1 with Light. He's not winning, but a swirl seed could change it. Volley hits onto
Flashes the volley.
Scout moves in, but can't quite finish the kill. And there we go. That's the answer. LNG, they find 2 kills.
Yeah, well, would you like me to say anything more, or is it just described there? LNG do have ample engage. They have the Sion, the Lillia, and the Leona. If Weibo do fail their positioning, you get a good sleep onto the backline, then yeah, this Lillia can be a huge issue. This is even without the Sion coming through. A lot of big skill shots miss here. You miss the spear, you miss the arrow, and once that kind of goes down, where's your big engage? You know, you're going on to Leona, who procs Aftershock and has the W up. That's not the target you want. You see that WeiWei managed to get huge damage through, and also the ult isn't blocked by the shield. There is a niche interaction where technically Lillia pressing the ult does get blocked by Braum shield if the particle flowing to that target is kind of in the same path as it. Doesn't quite get it there. Maybe that'll come through later. But LNG, if they could replicate that on a larger stage when it comes around to the bigger fights and they get the engage onto the backline, that is how they make it happen.
I thought the swirl seed was going to steal the cannon then. I was on the edge of my seat. It doesn't come through in the end. Let's take a little look at our lanes here as Light 1,500 gold up somehow in the AD carry role. And I believe Tarzan also having a lead. As I went to talk about gold leads immediately, it was covered up by a Kraken. But yeah, 1,000 gold both for Tarzan and Light. A little bit of a lead for Breathe. Whereas Scout on the other side, I mean, Corki is just something else right now. We've seen it earlier in this series. We've seen it in other series and playoffs. It's on a 14-game win streak. Scout wants to keep that record alive and keep LNG in this tournament. We saw how hard it was for Weibo to finish that last game. LNG will not go down without a fight. They are pretty far behind in gold. It's not enough to be a done deal for Weibo just yet.
No, so Dragon comes up. We did say, hey, maybe the Herald will be put down as a counterweight. There's no contest. They don't have to use that. They still have the Herald to use somewhere. maybe they just put it towards bot lane now. There's a chance that it goes towards that. We get ourselves a Mountain Dragon. You know what? That could really work out for LNG at some point. Zika can ult away from this tower. He might have to. You don't really want... Yeah, this could be a bit of an issue. Just ult away. Don't get Braum stunned. Gets his way through that. WeiWei do have the 5 grubs. Use that Herald to put it towards bot lane, and that'll be the last of the outer turrets taken. There's a goal into Xiaohu to even it up between him and Scout.
Nicely done here by Weibo. Use the Herald just to finish the tower off. To be honest, I think they maybe could have done this without the Herald. But
yeah.
I mean, look, you've already you've done such a good
Like,
job early on of taking these towers. It's like the Herald is kind of surplus to requirement.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, tower on sale. Like, I would have got it anyway, but sure, I guess it's slightly easier. Save you a little bit of effort in that case. And Xiaohu gets the gold all the same, so that's nice. We definitely saw earlier in the series with the Corki, if Corki is getting resources in a side lane, Corki does unreal amounts of damage. So Scout getting the advantage through some bits of this early game, that's good signs for LNG. And I have to say, once again, feels like one of those games where Weibo came out with a really strong start with Chris and Tarzan getting into the enemy jungle and making a real mess of things, but it hasn't rattled LNG too much. Considering the level of the gold lead, they've actually stabilized pretty okay. This hasn't expanded. They've given over a dragon, they've given over the grubs and the herald, but it hasn't been game-losing plays. You've got 2 items coming up for Ezreal. They've been built for Corki, waiting for that Muramana transformation as well. And when we get through to the later team fights, again, just reiterating how LNG can win this play. A good enough Swell Seed, a good enough Solar Flare, comboed up with Sion at the same time, is good enough to get enough CC to absolutely obliterate the first person into the play from Weibo. Weibo need to play well around the Braum, I think particularly probably blocking out the Sion with the shield and tanking up some of that damage there, and making sure that they can not fall prey to that engage and use the gold leads that they have with the double AD carries to peel through the engage and kill the front line.
The one thing I will say, no matter what the compositions, with the way that things have been going in LPL recently, I'm always looking towards the team with Corki. And Scout already got himself an MVP on that Corki in the first game of this series. It looked devastating for Weibo. He's got plenty of gold. He's getting those items online. And Gala on that Ezreal once again. Had a bit of a fumble late game in the previous game, but we've seen the damage he's able to get out in these fights. These 2 carries, in my opinion, 2 of the biggest tools that you can have as a team right now in terms of those team fights, in terms of just getting sheer damage out. But Weibo still with that lead. And again, it's just about maintaining. It's just about slowly but surely pushing that lead forwards.
Oh, that fog of war is so scary.
And to be fair, actually, you know, we talked about how fast they can kill Sion. That also applies to Baron. This is Ashe.
True,
alongside a Zeri. Like, Baron goes in seconds against this comp.
What's really interesting to me as well is that Light chose to go towards a Hurricane second as well. Maybe just saying that, look, if Sion and Leona are going in at the same time, I want to hit both of them. That's an interesting build opportunity there. Normally we see something, I mean, you could have gone for the Blade of the Ring King as well into this comp, but that might have even been better, actually, thinking about it. Wonder whether Light will want some of that more anti-tank damage later into things, but still, lots of AoE damage between both AD carries, and they're starting to starve out some vision on that top side. We did see briefly LNG's Fog of War, and yeah, that's an important thing in League of Legends, folks. As spectators, we are blessed with the ability to see both sides. It's really scary when you play against this, and you know that there is the threat of this. This is why LNG, they have to walk up like this and say, wow, hang on, there's so many there's so many traps on the head.
Yeah, for Hug when he pops his sweeper and there's traps everywhere. It's like, don't move a muscle. And they're just managing to clear those ones out in the end, get some vision onto the Baron importantly.
Well, Nidalee pops around the corner and just, clever girl, fully completing the Jurassic Park experience.
Oh dear. And actually that's the second item picked up from Tarzan, by the way. The Horizon Focus coming on through. Not only good for damage, also good for getting vision as well. You land that spear, it reveals so much. It tells you exactly what your opponents are trying to do.
Very good second, very cheap specs, second item spike as well. Could be very, very important because that power spike comes in just in time for Baron and Dragon. LNG haven't been picked off around this Fog of War yet, though. This is a good sign. They've managed to walk their way up through mid lane. That's important for them too. Other side, just look at that Ashe arrow, see where that lands. Light wasn't great at them in that first game, but one arrow could make the difference. One arrow could lead to Dragons, could lead to Barons, could lead to a whole load of things. Light, eyes on him, see if he can get a good pick.
I feel like the difference between that first game and this game is that rather than miss the arrows, Light's just not shooting them.
Not use them.
Weibo shot, I think, one arrow all game long. Just saving that as a tool should they need it. And there we go. Chunk onto WeiWei. Crisp happy to tank up the initial engage from Hung. And there's the arrow setting up onto Hung. Stun, follows it up with a spear to finish the job. Bree diving into the mix to tank for his team, but flashes over the wall and survives. WeiWei chunked low. Drake up onto the map. This should be Weibo on soul point.
When we talked about the win conditions, this is what we highlighted. Weibo wants to just make sure the engage doesn't reach the backline, peel back and kill him. It's exactly what happens. Xiaohu wasn't there, Scout wasn't there, it was a 4v4, but the important thing is the Ashe Braum was there. Such an obnoxious combo, and Hung can't escape from it as soon as he's brought himself in too deep. Weibo get themselves that big dragon. He's going to give themselves that soul point quite early into the game, I suppose. No dragons taken by LNG, and LNG, you can't afford to play the front line front to back like that. You are not going to win versus the Ashe Braum. As Hung goes in, you can just see the problem of this. Yes, the spear lands here, but it just isn't the play. You don't have the Sion in position, you don't have the Corki in position, and you're going into a Braum shield. The Braum shield is not bad. It's not going to save you. It's not going to be something you can kill this champion through. The extra damage comes through. It only leads to the one kill, but this is not the kind type of fight they want.
They can get through the Braum shield. We didn't see how it happened, but Crisp has died. And that means LNG have a moment of reprieve. 4v5 on the map right now. Hung clearing vision around this Baron. Is that... I feel like that would maybe be a bit too risky.
Oh, he just walked up and fired a Q, and then walked into a Corki and died, I guess. Too far from his teammates, and Scout goes over the Valkyrie over the wall. Chris uses both summoners for that too. So, yeah, it's a little bit different if the Braum is on their own against the Corki with 2 to 3 items. That's still a bit of an issue, but still, when we come through to the next fights of the game, I think that kind of interaction of frontline and engage is going to be so, so important. I think both teams are probably going to go straight down the front and center for this game from what we've seen of them so far, and hopefully that leads to some really good, inventive, exciting, messy team fights.
One thing I just want to point out on the scoreboard as well is the way that LNG are spreading their gold among their team right now. You can see Scout has been catching extra waves. He's well more than 10 CS per minute in this game, almost at 300 already. Same for Xiaohu. Gala has been dropping a couple of those waves. Does feel like this is very much the Scout show for LNG currently. Gala. Wait, okay, he moved. I thought he just dropped off a vision without moving for a second there.
Yeah,
it's been a long series, okay?
Yeah, he learned from that dude in Guardians of the Galaxy. If you just stand really still, you just go invisible. It's a rare technique. As Gala, he'd like to be more visible later on.
There was a really
damage.
solid Jurassic Park reference there that we've just been referencing Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. You see, you're so clever, Joe. Thank you. That's great. You could have told me that, you know, before I said the thing, but you didn't.
Well, it's rude to interrupt, what could I say? Weibo, though, I mean, this is not really the way we've been seeing Weibo play the game more recently. You know, when you think about last year, I feel like this is exactly what you'd expect from LNG versus Weibo. And the series has slowed down as it's gone on here. LNG very comfortable with a slow game, but, you know, is this going to be enough? Xiaohu caught by a swirl seed. Arrow goes across. Oh, look at that! I didn't even get away with that.
Yeah, that's it. Some MRs caught when they're asleep. Well, the arrow hits, just not onto anyone they can follow up with. And yeah, it has slowed down a lot. And, you know, typically we consider LNG the quote-unquote slow, methodical team. Sometimes LNG can be fast-paced, but they're always methodical. It really depends what's on their flowchart for the day and for that game. Weibo, because they don't have engage in jungle, they don't really have it in support either. They're not finding the clean picks. Breathe can get an extended 1v1 here. He's got the level 16 to level 15, extra level in that ult. Really starting to chunk through the health bars. Best he's going to get is the ult taken away, though, because yeah, ult for ult taken through there. I am getting worried for Weibo, though. They've not been able to push any sort of advantage, really, across the map. They've taken Fog of War, and that's it. They haven't denied farm. Haven't even really been able to get into the enemy jungle to steal as many. Well, okay, no, they have stolen some jungle camps. That's one thing they have done, but they haven't really forced LNG into really back-breaking decisions. Yeah. That will change, though. 1 minute and 17 seconds. Dragon coming up. Soul point for Weibo. If they manage to get themselves into that Dragon Soul kind of threat, because they're also on red side as well, they're not going to be trapped against the wall. It's a much better terrain for them than being stuck in the pit as a blue side Dragon taking team. Yeah. Imagine playing Sion when everyone's lined up against the wall. That could change everything. Weibo looking towards that Soul.
And it's such a valuable Soul for obviously like Breathe on the top side will be a little more durable in those fights, but importantly Crisp as well. You know, when you are a support, you get that extra value on all of your stats. It really can make a difference. Crisp already pretty tanky without Mountain Soul. But more importantly, to be honest, I think the key thing really is less about how good Mountain Soul is for Weibo, and more about how incredibly good it is for the side of LNG and how much you really don't want to let them get a single Drake.
True, that's a good point, and that's Gala. A little bit of damage. Hung too. He has the Warmog, so he'll start healing up eventually. Weibo get themselves push of that mid lane. 20 seconds until that dragon. LNG, no push in mid lane, no push in bot lane. Don't even have top lane pushing either. So they're going to have to do this the hard way. They're going to have to do it from behind the pace of the lanes. They're clearing out this mid lane, but can they really get towards this dragon unscathed? Those spears, one of them hits. Maybe that changes the conversation.
Big chunk on Hung from Xiaohu there. Remember, Xiaohu, no flash. Crisps is still on cooldown from that previous pick as well. LNG muscling their way into the river. As the spears, the volleys, all flying on through. Plenty for LNG to have to dodge. Similar story the other way, though, now that Weibo have to try and face check into the river themselves. Zika there to be that front line. This is where these AD carries have to come on through. LNG getting through this Drake, and I think it might just go without a contest. There's the Drake. Can they escape, though? TP coming on through his WeiWei, trying to get asleep, trying to keep his team alive. Crisp tanking up on that front line. Unbreakable. Insane value in the fight as Breathe gets onto Scout as well. Zika trying to chase onto Light, but he can't find the 1v1 this time. Double kill for Light, and Weibo looks to Baron.
Weibo get the kills again, but much like that last time, they do end up losing that dragon. Weibo's dragon setups haven't been great for getting the actual objectives, but they would be able to run this into a Baron. That could be everything they wanted all the same. LNG, if they can survive the Baron buff, this might work out for them, but, well, that might be a tough ask against Weibo, pushing in all lanes with the Baron buff buffing up the minions.
And part of the consequence there was that Breathe actually finished off the tier 2 in the bottom side before TPing in. So it was 5v4 for a long time for LNG. That's why they were able to get Drake. But then once that TP comes on through, everything changes.
Yeah, and a couple of big things here. Hung's gone for the Warmogs first, but with a change to Warmogs, he's actually not regenerating health. He doesn't have enough HP for it. He has to start the fight being a little lower, and the front line just isn't strong enough, partly because of that. You can see Zika, he doesn't want to be stuck in the front line. WeiWei absolutely doesn't either. So LNG, they find themselves the problem with the front to back. If it becomes about tank versus tank, the Ashe Braum will actually chew through them much more. Even though technically the Sion is much tankier than the Renekton, the Ashe Braum is really nasty.
I mean, look at the items for Xiaohu as well. 4 items out on this Zeri, Light on 3 as well, I believe, as Xiaohu indecisive on what item to pick up there. It is an Infinity Edge in the end, and LNG pushed to the very brink at this point. Crisp potentially caught, but I mean, is there such thing as caught with Crispy? He did get caught once early on the top side, but he's been so bold in the way he moves in and gets vision.
This game.
He's not afraid,
Yeah,
I'll give him that. He's not afraid.
No, and you know what? In the LPL, I love that. Because that's something which I think you can say about the grand majority of teams here in the LPL. They are, well, we had Fearless Draft earlier in the split. We have some Fearless players as well. Hey, we're all on topic here. Weibo have themselves that Baron buff. How much can they get out of this, though? They did manage to take the bot lane in a turret. Gala has a Bloodthirster, so he's actually happy tanking the wave in. He gets to keep it away from turret. Now they go for the engage. Okay, it's onto Crisp, though. That's not what you need.
It's not that tanky. He does get knocked up. Light looking to finish the job, and he'll do so. And now Zika locked up as well. What was that from LNG? Zika flashes to safety. Breathe on the other side of the wall will finish the job. Double kill for Light. I think that red buff finished the kill in the end. And Weibo have just been gifted the end of the game on a silver platter. Xiaohu pushing in the bot side while Weibo win a 4v5 elsewhere. LNG just lose their minds when it matters the most. After 5 games, after all this, that's how the series ends.
LNG in front of their home crowd might have just seen their frontline players completely forget what Braum Ashe does as they walk into their dooms. Weibo, they find themselves the crack in the dam and the water keeps flowing.
I cannot believe this is how the series ends, but Weibo looking on the brink to make their way through the lower bracket. They get a second opportunity, and they look towards top esports with glee in their eyes. Weibo take LNG down 5 full games. The rivalry lives on. but LNG do not.
Weibo find themselves victory here and will move on to face Top Esports in their next round of this lower bracket to see if they can get themselves towards a finals. Pretty unprecedented here for Weibo. They found themselves finalists of Worlds last year, but they've actually not necessarily done that well in regional stuff in terms of the playoffs of LPL at that same time. They're finding themselves in a high result for the last few years, and LNG will see themselves go out in front of their home crowd in what was sadly just a blink and you miss it end to that last game, sadly for them. The front line didn't understand the